Do you love gooey, delicious cinnamon rolls? Well, you are in for a unique treat today with this retro recipe. Hi, I am Trista, and I am the vintage cookbook nerd, and I'm here today to bring you a really interesting recipe, vinegar rolls. So let's look at the book where it came from and check out the recipe. Let's dive right in. So this is the community book that we are using, Favorite Recipes from Our Best Cooks. And it's from a high school band, and it costs $5. Back in 1982-83, here's a picture of the band. And it's from a high school. The publisher is in Mission, Kansas, but I'm not sure if the high school is, so it doesn't really say. But it's probably somewhere around there. So what we are going to be making today are the old-fashioned vinegar rolls. Now, this sounds like it would be a savory recipe, but it's kind of a quick cinnamon roll, so I'm really curious to see how this turns out. So it is from a great-great-grandmother's recipe, so I have high hopes. Grandmas are the best. So let us dive right into the recipe. Check out these rolls. We will see how they turn out. The first part of this recipe is very different. We're going to combine 4 cups of water in a saucepan here, along with 3/4 of a cup of white vinegar, just plain vinegar. No flavors here, although if you want to try flavored later, that would be interesting. And then we have 2 cups of sugar. So we are supposed to bring this to a boil and of course dissolve the sugar and then keep it warm. So if you have a warming setting on your stove, or you can just always heat it up a tiny bit more before you use it towards the end of the recipe. But I will come back in a moment and we will see the rest of the recipe. So we are going to continue with our vinegar roll recipe, and it says to sift the dry ingredients together, which is 3½ cups of all-purpose flour. That's going in the big bowl with my whisk here, and then 3½ teaspoons of baking powder, and then an 1/8 teaspoon of salt. And all of the amounts and the recipe are in the description below, so you can try these out for yourself. And that looks wonderful. Now, the original calls for shortening to be cut in to this mixture. I really prefer butter. Sometimes I use shortening just to try it out, but I decided for a cinnamon type roll that butter would be better, which it always is. Shortening sometimes can be great for pie crust, it just depends. But I like to use my fingers to cut in butter. Make sure obviously that your hands are clean, but I just like the feel of it, and I feel like I can mash nice big pieces in there. So I will come back when I have this step completed, and then we will get the rest of the dough mixed up. So we are back. I finished getting all the butter in there. You can see that it looks really nice and crumbly. So now we're gonna mix in 2 cups of whole dairy milk into here and mix this together into a dough. I think this is really interesting that there's no sugar in this dough, but there's sugar in the boiled up water mixture that I will show you what we're going to be doing with that in a moment. But this looks like a nice dough. Really reminds me of biscuit dough, really. So this shall be quite interesting. And this is a nice cinnamon roll recipe if you're shorter on time, because there's no rising involved, of course, no yeast. So that makes it quite easy. So this is what the dough should look like. And then we're gonna move on to rolling it out and getting the yummy cinnamon stuff on there. So I'll see you over there. We are back. It says to divide the dough in half. So what I did was I sprinkled quite a bit of flour here on this mat, and kind of, because the dough is pretty sticky, I want to make sure that I could roll it out properly. So I've floured it so it's not quite as sticky anymore. So let's roll it out. And the original recipe says to use softened butter. I decided to melt mine because I like better coverage on my cinnamon rolls. And then I have some cinnamon sugar here. This is about ½ cup of granulated sugar. A few flour bits fell in there, but that's okay. And about 2 to 2.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. You can put more or less depending on how much cinnamon you like. I'm a little crazy about how much I love cinnamon. I love super spicy cinnamon things, including tea and candies. Let me know in the comments below if you love cinnamon or not. Of course, you could always make these different. Maybe you want to make lavender rolls, put some lavender in the sugar. Even if you have dried rose petals that haven't been sprayed, you can do all kinds of stuff. But of course, cinnamon is the classic. So what I like to do is spread the melted butter here with a silicone brush. A long time ago, back in the early 2000s, with my mom and my sister-in-law, we had a baking business, and we made a lot of cinnamon rolls, and they were huge. We made with raisins and without. And there was one guy that came to our stand, and he always said, one roll with flies. He meant raisins, and one without. So we looked forward to that joke every single Saturday. And sometimes we would trade produce for baked goods with that farmer, and it was really fun. So I like to give a really generous coating of the cinnamon sugar. And then we're gonna roll these up. And I have a 13x9 pan here. I sprayed it with some pan spray so that these don't stick. As you can see, there's quite a bit of flour here, so it doesn't stick there. And I've got my handy bench cutter here. I'm gonna use that to cut it into the rolls. I'm just gonna show you doing one roll because it'll be exactly the same with the other half of the dough. But I will show you when we're ready to get them in the oven and the process there. So you can kind of eyeball an inch. So we're gonna, sometimes it sticks a little. Let's get a little flour on this. Yeah, just kind of eyeball the inch. You can use a ruler if you want, but it looks cute, right? So we'll get those into the pan like this. And when I'm ready to put them in the oven and get the last steps done, I will come back and show you that. So this is what the rolls look like in the pan. I cozied them up, but there's still space around, and I did turn them around because it says put the cut side down, which makes sense because you want the flatter side up because they're pretty that way. So before I get them in the oven, I'm gonna do the magical last step, so stay tuned. Remember the warm or hot vinegar, sugar, and water mixture that I kept warm on the stove? Well, this needs to be poured over the rolls before we get them in the oven. Now, it sounds very, very strange, and I'm very excited to see what happens here. This is a lot of liquid, but I am going to follow this and see what happens. I'm really hoping I can get all this liquid in here. And the oven is on at 350 degrees. Oh my gosh, yeah, this is a lot of liquid. Now they're sort of floating. I hope this is all right. Well, I'm just gonna follow the recipe. So we have floating cinnamon rolls now. So I will get these in the oven, and they go for about half an hour. I might check them at 20 minutes because I have my oven on the convection mode. So we'll see what magic happens. So these were in the oven. I did end up baking them the full 30 minutes. The only thing is it didn't specify the exact size of pan, and there's still a lot of liquid down in the bottom. So they look really beautiful on top. I'm just a little concerned. Well, let's just take one out and see. So it's still very gummy on top here. I know it's supposed to be soft, but I think what I might do is experiment by taking a few out and putting them on this baking sheet and baking them on the other side a little bit, because I think maybe originally they wanted you to put it on a big baking sheet like this, and then the liquid would probably distribute better, but they did not specify the size. So I'm going to experiment with this and see how it goes. And in the directions, I'd say I would urge you to use a baking pan with lip like this, and I think the liquid would distribute out a lot better that way. So that's probably what they intended, but they did not say that. So let's try to remedy this. I think they're still going to be really delicious, but let's check this out. So this is the result after I baked these. I ended up baking these turned over, the kind of wet side up, for 15 minutes. And then I actually put them under the broiler to get them a little browned on this side for about 4 to 5 minutes, kind of checking in between. They're still kind of soft on the edges, which is good. I am very curious to try these. I'm gonna try them with a family tasting, but I think I am going to put a glaze, maybe a vanilla glaze on part of these once they cool down a little bit, and then we can compare. And as I say, originally I think this was meant to be in a big metal baking pan like this one, so the liquid could distribute more, and maybe it was supposed to be like kind of a sticky bun situation where it kind of created a syrup underneath. I am not certain, but I want to try kind of most of the original one versus the glazed one. So wait and see. We will get to the family tasting, and so hold on for the final results. So I did decide to whip up a little bit of glaze here. So there's about 1.25 cups of powdered sugar in here, a ½ teaspoon of cinnamon, and a teaspoon of vanilla, and about 1/4 cup of whole milk. So I decided to put a glaze on here while they're still a little bit warm. And I'm just gonna glaze half of them because I wanna kind of compare the glazed to the non-glazed. And since this is a recipe that we've tinkered with a little bit, We might as well tinker some more. That's what makes it fun, right? Let me know if you like to try to make little tweaks to recipes. It's a lot of fun. And I will include this glaze in the description and how I remedied this recipe along with what I think should work better. I'm really happy to do that. So I'm gonna do 7 of the rolls since there's 14 rolls. And you can always cut this in half to make fewer rolls. And I do have a little glaze left over, but that would definitely cover the rest if you were to glaze all of them. But I'll just save this for another use. So we'll see you for the family tasting for the final verdict in a moment. We're gonna try the vinegar rolls. The family's here to try them.
What makes them vinegar rolls?
So once you get the rolls in the pan, you pour over a mixture that has sugar, vinegar, and water that you've heated up and boiled, and then, yeah.
And there's a cinnamon layer.
Yeah, cinnamon and butter.
Oh, okay. So it's kind
But
of
all the sugar is in the liquid, which is kind of interesting.
Very interesting. I guess.
Yeah, so this is the unglazed version here.
First
step, unglazed.
Oh, I smell vinegar. Oh.
Kind of biscuit-like. It's not super sweet. The unglazed one is not that sweet, but it is moist. Definitely very
Kind of
moist.
dense.
I don't know if you can see. It's very moist, but
And I do get vinegar. Like, it's
yeah,
light,
it does. You do taste.
All right, I'm trying the glazed
Let's try the glazed one. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Adam, on the unglazed?
I'm a huge fan. I've had better cinnamon rolls.
Yeah. It is moist, but it's kind of strange, right?
Yeah. The glazed one's actually pretty good.
The vinegar gives it an interesting taste.
Yeah, I think that's the thing.
Not bad. It's almost tastes citrusy.
Yeah, it's not like super terrible strong, but I agree. Glazed is where it's at.
Yeah. Pretty good though. I'll say I'm approved.
Yeah.
I kind of would think it's like
The glazed is quite good, actually.
Yeah.
it's kind of like a Danish.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not getting a lot of cinnamon, so it's not a cinnamon roll. But
Yeah,
it's kind
even
of
though I put cinnamon in there, but I think maybe because you put all that liquid in there, it maybe seeps out a little.
Yeah.
but
But
tasty.
yeah, definitely with the glaze, I think you've got a nice pastry on your hands. So worth tinkering and playing around with. Thanks, you guys.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.